So yours it's just that little bit. Anyways, yeah. Yeah. Okay, good evening, everybody. Please be aware if you are attending this meeting, our meetings are recorded for future viewing. We are privileged to gather on the traditional territory of call the meeting to order. And I believe the agenda was changed online, but may not be everybody's copy. So item 3B will add McElhaney under petitions and delegations. Any other additions or amendments to the agenda? If there's none, could I have a motion, please, to accept the amended agenda? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, under item 3A, petitions and delegations, we have C. Dubin with Connected Coast fiber optic installation. Welcome this evening. Are they here? Wes, I think Wes, are you there? Oh, Wes, okay.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm hopeful Carlos is joining as well. He's been certainly more involved in the lead up to this meeting, but happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Okay. So just for those in the group, we have, or in here, members of the public and anybody online, we have the Connected Coast package come to us with a suggestion for a landing site, and council had a few questions. So we'll open it up the floor to council to ask Wes. I cannot see how to spell the last name, if you can.
It's Isis. Last name is Isis.
E-I-S-S. Okay, great. Thank you very much. B-I-S-S-I-S. E-I-S-S-E-S. So yes. Thank you.
The story of my life.
Great. Okay, who would like to begin? I will then. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Downey. Go ahead.
Okay, just I found it interesting that where it's proposed is in a slide area, and I found that interesting. It's also adjacent, directly adjacent to a residence, and I do have concerns about the noise, the chronic noise. So I wonder if you had some thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, I can certainly speak to the noise side of things. So the site itself should be like extremely noise friendly, residentially friendly. The noisiest component of the landing site would be the backup generator, which would only run in the event of like a power outage. So it's only complementary to the system. We're connected to commercial power, and the unit that we use is a Kohler brand generator, and it is a residential unit. So it is designed to be, for home use, and so the decibel, the shroud, the housing that the unit is in is pretty quiet overall. Again, it is a motor, so it does run. It's has a certain amount of sound, and it's a propane unit as well. So any emission, there's no smell. It's not a diesel engine, and I have experience using these in a variety of applications, for telecom use, both in sort of very remote rural settings as well as closer in town, and is similar to this installation, quite close to homes. And I have not had any complaints as of yet.
So you've had them right next to somebody's home before and nobody has an issue with that?
That's right. Yes. Like I said, these units are designed to be like a backup power system for a home use, like in a residential setting, much like we have here. And we specifically chose these units both for their power output as well as that sort of friendly as friendly as you can get, from a noise and emission sense.
The sound only comes into play should there be an outage.
Correct. Yeah. The unit also starts monthly for like a self-test for like 10 minutes as well. And we have the ability to program that to run, at a set interval. So we can do it at lunch, during the noisier part of the day, in the morning, evening, on the weekend, we have that latitude. And should we get any feedback on that sort of little self-test from adjacent residents, we can adjust as needed.
So what about the fact that you're in a slide zone? We are spending millions of dollars to mitigate it, but that work has not been completed.
Yeah, I'm unaware of that side of things. So I see that Carlos has joined. I'm not sure if that has gone into Baylink. So I suppose I should introduce myself as well. So again, Wes Isis. I'm the director of projects with City West and the project lead for Connected Coast. I represent both City West and the Strathcona Regional District. And this whole Connected Coast initiative is jointly owned between the two owner groups. And Baylink Networks is our design builder who won the bid to do the design and also the construction of all the fiber optic landings, the marine deployment of the cable and the like. So Carlos is the lead survey technician with Baylink and has been scouting all the locations. And Carlos, I think we're including this one, we're north of 160 landings at this point. So if Carlos hasn't seen it yet, he's seen most things. So a slide, an active geotechnical area might be unique in this instance. Carlos, could you speak to the site selection and what things we considered?
Carlos,
Yeah.
before you speak, my apologies. The German and me jumped straight to the agenda. I'm going to start on my right here and just go around and let council introduce themselves. So go ahead.
And Marie Barron, councillor.
And I'm Gabby Wickstrom. I'm the mayor.
Shelley Downey, councillor.
And on the screen, go ahead.
I'm Ryan Mitchell, councillor representing the taxpayers of Port McNeill.
Hey, I'm Derek Cole, councillor, Port McNeill.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Carlos.
So yeah, my name is Carlos Dubon, and I work as a designer, and I'm a survey coordinator for Baylink Network. So I coordinate the site visits with environmental team, and then we go out and check out as many options as we can to choose the best landing. So for Port McNeill, we went to four sites, we looked at 4 different options. Is there any way I can share my screen? Is that okay? Or
Yeah, Carlos, you've been made a presenter, so you should be able to share your screen.
so so these were the 4 different options that we looked at. The very first one was the one by the BC Ferries. So the original landing was by BC Ferries, but then we got into, so there's an explanation here. So the option didn't work out because BC Ferries permitting was getting too difficult to obtain, and they're not very interested in our landing at any of the BC Ferries terminals. So so we had to choose like a different options. So we looked at 3 more options here. So option 2, so we were there, and then 2 neighbors came out and they told us that there was like a lot of flooding and there was like erosion problems in the area. And they told us to avoid this area here. They told us they were very excited for the project and stuff, but they told us to look somewhere else. So so we went and looked for option 3. Option 3. So we found out there was like a lot of utilities, and there's like a main that goes it goes down here. I'm not sure if it's, I can't recall if it's like the sewer the main sewer, but yeah, there's like a lot of utilities around this area, and then we went and so then we had to go back. It was like a whole different trip that we did just to look at this one here, and that's when we met with Julian. He did mention so this is how the design would look. So the other option was like coming on the other side, but he mentioned there was like a slide hazard here. So that's why we moved it to this side of the road. Yeah. So before it was like coming this way and to go across the road, but then he mentioned that there was like a slide hazard here. So we just kept everything as close as possible to this property, as he mentioned, because there might be like some development in the future. Said so. This is what the design. I mean, this is what we're proposing to do. So the line would come here. This would be trenched. Then we would install like a vault, and then it would go up to the power pole, and then there would be a pole-mounted cabinet, and then we would have the generator and the propane tank. We do have pictures of what they look like. So this is what it looks like. So this is the generator. This is
Just
an installed yeah, this is an installed generator. That's the vault. No, sorry, this is the propane tank. That's the vault. This is the generator, and this is the pole-mounted cabinet here.
So question on, just layering on to Councillor Downey's question about power outages. Are you aware of the number of power outages that we have? It's not one or two in a winter season. It can be in the 20s and 30s.
Yeah, so yeah, we yeah, so I talked to Julian about that, and he gave us that information. Yeah.
And often they're often they're prolonged. So
Brenda, we always appreciate kind of the local knowledge, of course. When you say prolonged, just obviously can't be ultra specific, but on an average, what would you say the outages last?
2-3 days, sometimes, and hours long. A day, 12 hours.
Right. So the site, yeah, with the propane tank, you know, continuous running at the load that we're expecting the equipment to hold, can easily run for anywhere between 11 and 20 hours, like at full rate. But we can also easily schedule propane refills as needed, and we'll be remotely monitoring all of our systems, so we're able to, you know, take action, you know, proactively in the event of prolonged outages like you described. And long term, if we found certain locations where we're truly prone to, you know, extended outages, like you say.
I see you, Ryan, just a moment.
Ryan's got his hand up there. That you know, we may choose to twin the propane tank down the line, which would, you know, double the runtime.
So I have, before Councillor Mitchell speaks, I just want a follow up to that. I have one other question. I wasn't saying it in terms of, do you realize you might not be able to power it? I'm thinking about the house being right next door, and you just said that normally it isn't an issue. And so if we've got prolonged power outages, I just wanted to put that out there that it may be an issue. And then the other thing I was wondering is there is an area called Beach Camp. Has that been considered?
I'll defer to Carlos for that. He did all the, if it wasn't on those 4 pins, I don't believe, Carlos, did you look at Beach Town?
No, we didn't.
How did, I'll ask the question afterwards. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell, go ahead, and then Councillor Downey has a question.
Okay, well, I guess my problem is I don't believe that the project was chosen with with a thorough plan. First of all, this is taxpayers' money. So whether there's a grant to do this and whether it's being funded by the federal government, it's still the taxpayers of Canada and BC and Port McNeill that are paying for this. So we have a generator sitting just down the road from where you want to put your landing point. And there's absolutely no reason that you've explained to me why we're not landing at that point and approaching the town of Port McNeill and asking to tie in to our generator, which is going to come on to pump sewage when there's a power outage. And so that would save the taxpayers $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 in money. And so why aren't we looking at that option? I didn't hear that being explored. I asked this question the first time this came up, and I'm asking it again now. Has this been properly and thoroughly explored? So that there would be no generator required and no noise generated, no pollution generated, and a whole bunch of money saved. And I don't, from what you've explained so far, nothing tells me that that's been done, and nothing tells me that that wouldn't work.
No, duly noted, Ryan. I appreciate the comments, and we, you know, as a rule of thumb, we don't generally integrate all of our systems with, you know, relying on others. Now, that said, it's not to the exclusion of that option. I would gently push back on your characterization of the costs. These generators are actually quite cost efficient. We have a big program here with a lot of landing sites, a lot of things we need to do a lot of cost control on. And again, part of the reason we chose these Kohler units is their flexibility, their small footprint, low emission, low noise, and low cost. I don't have the cost directly in front of me, but I believe they're $6,000 to $7,000 for the unit itself. It double that for the install.
A follow-up question, Councillor Mitchell?
My follow-up question is, it really doesn't matter if they're low cost. If you're duplicating service that's already been provided by the taxpayer, it's a waste of taxpayers' dollars, and I'm opposed to it.
You, Councillor Downey?
Councillor Cole.
Oh, did you have a question to ask? You haven't had a chance yet. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. In light of maybe the Beach Drive slide being a risk, I think option 4 has the least risk, knowing from what I know about the steepness of the slope. So I don't really see the generator being much of an issue when we have outages. Every 5th house has a generator going outside. It's only during outages. So a couple questions. Does the unit, if the generator's not running, does the unit buzz, or, you know, like somehow transformers make like a buzzing noise? So that's my first question. Hopefully a quick answer.
No.
Okay.
quick answer. Yeah.
Okay. Out of 160 landings you mentioned, you know, those are all gratis by municipalities, etc., or do you have lease arrangements? I suspect maybe you have some lease arrangements where revenue is generated from these landings. Could you expand on that?
Sure. Yeah, great question. We do enter into site license agreements at I would call it 99% of our landing locations, but it is only a contractual style fee at the majority of these locations, especially where we're on public property. So a nominal fee just to recognize the contract, like $10 a year type of a situation. Areas where we are extremely constrained on options and we have to land on private land, again, we attempt to keep those fees extremely low. And, I think at the worst case that I can think of right now would be, several $100s a year. So, from a revenue standpoint, very, very I hope that no one's looking at that as the benefit that this would bring. It's more so the enhancement of connectivity options, down the road, right? Once the system is active and the possibilities of connectivity.
That's a great segue. And if I could hold for one more question and a comment. So I really don't understand, like, is this going to affect my Netflix upload speed? Like, is this tapping internet from our town, or why? You know, that has not been explained to me. And before you answer that, that's a public access law you're proposing with absolutely no public access on it at this point. There's no way for the public to walk and access the waterfront. And I put this, I guess, to my council maybe too. Would this project consider, you know, is that going to formalize a route where a vehicle could get down to the water? Like, is this going to leave us some benefit for the local? Because again, we can't, it's all bush. We can't get down to the water there, and it is public property. So I'm wondering if there could be some sort of benefit where a route down to the water is formalized, whether informally because you have to get down there anyways, or maybe you guys go a little extra mile and do something for the public. So yeah, that's my comment. And the one more question.
Derek, I'll start with the system itself. So the Connected Coast is what's called a transport project versus a last mile. So if you can imagine a highway system with off ramps and local distribution roads, we're the highway system. So we're putting that first kind of foundational infrastructure in that will connect back from Vancouver all the way to Prince Rupert, making landings in between at like 159 different communities. And so the internet there becomes like the opportunity to have each of these landing locations. Port McNeill would be an off ramp. Now locally, there may be existing infrastructure. You might have TELUS, you might have Shaw locally. There might be another provider that wants to start up or is present. They all would have equal opportunity to work with us to connect to that landing location and the devices in that pole mounted cabinet. And at that point, perhaps your Netflix changes, depending on your and your upload speeds and whatnot, depending on how that provider chooses to implement the system. There's Councillor Ryan spoke to the taxpayer kind of bend on this. This is wholly funded by grant dollars from both the federal and provincial governments, and it is targeted towards communities that are considered underserved by the federal government. And that underserved, and you can't see me, but I'm putting air quotes up, is anyone that has or communities that cannot meet the threshold of 50 megabits down and 10 megabits up. So 50-10 is what people talk about. So this transport project is intended to lay the foundation for that future last mile connectivity off of it, because without the bigger pipe they're available to tap off of, the opportunity for last mile is considerably lessened. Now, Port McNeill, I believe, does enjoy some level of fiber services. I actually checked today. It is showing on the federal maps that it is served, the downtown kind of Port McNeill area. But you have to think of this project as, again, back to that highway analogy, because there's decent, transportation, call it, in Port McNeill, up and down, the chain from your town. That's not the case, right? So up in the North Coast, many of the kind of rural communities, even along Vancouver Island, certainly suffer from poor internet. And areas where we land and there is already options, this just adds to that ecosystem of potential competition, choice, and the like.
Did you have a question, Councillor Barron? Haven't had an opportunity.
My question was, the field survey was conducted on June 22nd, 2021. This is kind of the first we've seen of it. And when I look at the subtitle zone map there, it seems like the line goes out and then it doglegs and then doglegs. And I'm assuming it doglegs a bit more. So I would kind of echo what was said earlier. Why was Beach Camp or somewhere in that undeveloped area between the end of the Beach Drive development and beach camp, not considered?
So I think I can answer it. So the first time we were there, it was actually someone else, and then I took over the job. They went to a different company. That was the first two options, and then we did the last two options. That's when we met with Julian. But like he didn't mention, like, I think he was okay with this option. So that's why we didn't look into any other options. I will be on the island next week if it's needed. I mean, I can just go there and survey the other option. We're gonna be in the island for like maybe 2 days, and maybe we can take another day to go there, and there's gonna be an environmental person with me as well, so we can take a day to go and look at that option.
So Carlos, when you say the first two options, those first two options on your sheet, are you talking about other options? Because this is actually the opposite direction that myself and Councillor Barron are talking about.
No, no, just those options that are shown there. Those are the only 4 options that we looked at.
That probably would be a good idea to check out that other one. Councillor Downing? Go ahead.
If I may, just before we shift potentially to another topic, I'd just ask a base level question. Is there power available at this other proposed location? Because that is a key requirement, right? Access to close to the landing site to commercial power.
Yes, there's power lines.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand, this is about a connected coast. You're saying it's going from Vancouver to Prince Rupert. Why are you ducking into Port McNeill? We do have fiber optic here. So what is the intent behind that?
Yeah, great question. So this system is called what's called a festoon network. So in a lot of if you think of cross-oceanic subsea systems, so like transatlantic, transpacific, they have powered nodes under the water that repeat the signal and recharge it and boost it along. The Connected Coast project, again called a festoon network, and what that means is we need to have landings every so often. We try to keep them within about 80 kilometers of each other for that signal to come in, regenerate, keep hopping along the chain. So when this project was envisioned and as we've been walking through the design, we tried to target those eligible communities that are considered underserved, and then also depending on where those map out, we may need strategic locations like a Port McNeill where we need to land and regenerate anyways, and we try to situate those in places that may again reap the benefit of having the system, even though they wouldn't be explicitly eligible for the system, right? So we try to take a balanced approach and try to maximize the benefits across the provincial coastline.
Are you bringing, what kind of cable is this coming in? What type?
So it's so our design builder Baylink Networks is a Vancouver-based, BC-based company. Actually, really interesting, great news story that they've won this bid. They have a proprietary submarine cable that they have they invented and manufactured, as well as a whole deployment system around that cable. So it's a kind of an innovative, made in BC network design, and they have, it's all manufactured offshore. Of course, the big cable industries are either in Europe, China, or the Netherlands, so they source through a variety of locations. The cable itself is about the size of your thumb, so it's very small, but it's very robust, super strong. But again, because of this festoon network, we have ample opportunity, and the network is protected each way. So in the event of any damage on the line, north or south of any particular location, it's what's called a self-healing network. So it'll just redirect traffic the other way, like automatically. And then that gives time for a crew to come and, repair anything that might be damaged.
Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. A suggestion and just one more question. I assume this means one more cable hanging from our power lines in town, but it's not going to mean more power poles other than the one at the landing site. I'm a little sensitive to like more power lines and stuff in town. We should know that if that's what you're proposing.
So no aerial installation other than what was depicted there on Carlos's images. So we come into that box and go back out again. Now down the road, should there be further last mile development, TBD on what shape that might take. Could be underground, could be aerial, but that's not in scope of what we're asking for today.
Okay, and the area suggested that you look into further called Beach Camp is private property. I'm going to suggest you look at our sewage treatment plant, which is adjacent to that property. The town owns it right to the waterfront. In my opinion, there's power a lot closer to the water there. We have communication lines for all of our equipment there, and perhaps that's a more suitable spot. Thanks.
Suggestion, thank you. Okay, Councillor Mitchell?
And I might add that I'm sure we could work out something. I'm sure a council would be amenable to providing emergency power if it was located near one of our emergency power generators that taxpayers have already paid for. And I think that needs to be considered. Being independent and saying, we don't normally share power or look for power from other sources is absolutely not responsible spending of taxpayers' dollars. And I can't emphasize that enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming this evening and answering our questions, and look forward to hearing from you again once you've made a visit to our community.
Very, really appreciative, great questions. Appreciative of everybody's time. I wonder, Carlos, has the site license template been shared with the council and or Julian?
Yeah, no, I don't have the site license. I'm sure I'm not sure if Christina had sent it, but we can send it.
Yeah, we have a boilerplate agreement that we've kind of drawn up for this specific use, and we're happy to share that. We're super open to working with whether other, perhaps you guys have a template already that you're used to using for situations like this, and very much open to fine tuning it to suit each individual need.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And can I add something? So for next week, if it's gonna be for so next week we might go there to visit the site and stuff, your community, and anybody is welcome to join us to give input or show us around or existing generators and that.
Yeah, and I would, Carlos, that's a great offer, and I would encourage a good look at the other option. I would, however, like to just point to the schedule. We do have, the crews are actively working to get, basically we're focused on the Campbell River to Port Hardy stretch of the network, and that's coming up kind of mid-October to start. And the way the construction typically rolls out would be the construction of the landing site itself, and then the cable ship comes, pulls the cable in after the landing is ready.
Can anyone hear me on this?
Yes, we can, yeah. I don't know what happened there, but
No.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out.
Hello, can you hear me?
sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
Matt, just one moment. We're almost there. If you can let Matt know. Sorry, there was just somebody else talking on top. One more time, Wes.
No problem. Yeah, again, just wanted to point to the timeline here. We are obviously our problem, not yours. So would appreciate a quick resolution if we could, to kind of pinning down this location. And Carlos, I know that we have a ton of provincial permitting underway and very close to being released. And I believe it's predicated on the existing location. So if there's any kind of tweaks to that, we should need to button that up quickly, just because it does have a larger effect outside of just Port McNeill. And yeah, I'd really love to see this landing get sorted out and add Port McNeil's awesome community to the network.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thanks all.
Okay, so I'm gonna, before I go to the next topic, just make sure, Matt, can you hear us? You can't hear us. Not David. See it as a presenter, right? Can you hear us, Matt? Just one slide on the side. Okay. Sorry, everybody online and in the room.
Could I maybe motion that we adopt our minutes from the meeting of July 18th?
Sure, yeah. Okay.
Second.
That's working now.
Just call the question.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting the July 18th minutes as we jumped ahead? Great. And also minutes of the August 9th, 2022 meeting. Second. All those in favor?
May I comment?
Go ahead.
I checked online earlier and our minutes don't seem to be up to date. I wanted to double check something and yeah, they're not up to date.
Staff?
Through the
Thanks.
chair. Councillor Cool, we've been working to get those all caught up to date. We're just about up to date, so you'll see everything probably by tomorrow or Thursday morning. We should have everything that's everything.
Awesome. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Okay, Matt, can you hear us now?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent, okay. All right, so item 3B, we have Matt Friedrich with McElhaney here to answer questions to do with our municipal marina repairs. One more time, I have with me Councillor Barron, myself, Mayor Wickstrom, Councillor Downey, and online Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Cole. And you are, sir?
Yeah, so Matt Friedrichs, I'm with McElhaney Limited. So I was the engineer of record for this and the contract administrator.
Very much. So we have included this on the agenda. There are some council members who have some questions. And I'll open up the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I guess my very first question would be, could we see the drawings of that are going to restore this approach to our docks as per the original blueprints, which would put the ramp approach, the trestle as it were, at a proper grade so that it doesn't destroy our sidewalk on our marine walkway that we've spent a long time developing. Is right now completely disrupted. So I would like to know, can we see the drawings for that so that we know what it is they intend to do to remediate this? Because we should be made whole here. This job wasn't done right.
Yeah, so the existing trestle that went in was the exact same size and alignment as the existing timber one. So what we've discussed with Blue Water Systems is when they come back on site to install the fish cleaning station, they're going to basically cut the trestle short so it ends at the lock blocks, not on the original alignment, and then essentially regrade that the concrete there. So it'll stop essentially right at the lock blocks. We haven't received any formal blueprints from them. We discussed with them on site and had some photos, and they agreed to it. So we can request that if you'd like, and we can provide a bit of a summary there. They've reviewed it with their engineer and don't have any concerns with it. Yep.
My concern is that, here you're saying that the trestle is exactly the same length as the existing one that was removed.
Mhm.
And that simply isn't the case. The existing one did not land where it would destroy our sidewalk. That trestle wasn't built according to the specifications, which was to put it on grade with the existing sidewalk. and they put a landing pad out there that completely destroyed our sidewalk. Is that going to be removed?
Yeah.
And we're going to have our sidewalk back?
Yeah.
I think it
They
behooves somebody.
measured the existing timber trestle and essentially built one that had the exact same footprint. So that's why it sticks out further than it was.
That's not really our problem, it's their problem, because they destroyed what we had, and that isn't what we hired them to do. So I personally want to see a drawing to make sure that what they're gonna do meets our specifications and satisfactory to us. Because I'm not satisfied that they did a proper job there. Because what you're saying is they did it right, but they're changing it because we want them to. They didn't do it right. And we need to acknowledge that and make sure that they give us a
Thank
drawing.
you've made that point 3 times now, so let Matt answer.
I'll request a sketch from Councilor Mitchell, which shows the existing alignment and then the new proposed one, and then what we had before.
Thank you. And one other point I would like to make, Mayor Wickstrom, is that I was down there today and yesterday, and I lost count of how many planks are loose on that dock. Then the fasteners are not holding the planks down. That's a tripping hazard. People are going to get hurt. And whatever the reason is, it's not acceptable to me. Those planks need to be securely fastened, and they're not. They're coming up, and it's a brand new dock. So I'd like to know what they're going to do about that.
Yeah, I say obviously, yeah, that's the first we've heard about it. So we'll pass it on to Blue Water Systems. We put some heat on them here because they were supposed to come out here in September to install it. So now this is being pushed to, I believe, mid-October, end of October now. So we'll relay that to them and ask them exactly why those planks are lifting. That's surprising, to be honest. So we'll follow up on that as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. The way your screen
understand.
allocation is, I can't see your hand. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Wickstrom. Yes, Matthew, thank you for your report. I don't know if you're involved with this project from the start, but it was supposed to start considerably earlier, like a year or two ago, and we delayed it on a handshake that we were going to get some concession, some freebie, and unfortunately, it was never really formalized. Is that your understanding of the situation, that there was something gained by putting this project off because they couldn't make the deadline?
Yeah, and the reason they couldn't hit the deadline is the project that barge was committed to ahead of time hit some geotechnical issues which they couldn't foresee, right? So we accepted that as this is unique equipment. There's not that many of it, and unfortunately these things happen. And then the agreement was, because we weren't going to make the winter 2020 fishery window, we would push it back essentially a calendar year. So we were trying to do this 6 months later in the busy summer season, which is why then it was slated for November of last year. It was unfortunate. Unfortunately, I think this is part of marine construction. And I certainly think that they made up for it when we were on site. I mean, there was a number of things that I highlighted in that little memo that they did for free, and brought some cost savings forward from that. We didn't have any formal agreement in place that because they were a year late that there was anything documented. But I think there were some agreements that this was something that was out of their control, and they were going to do their best. Unfortunately, now this is now the second time they've been significantly late. So it certainly has put us all in a bit of a disadvantage here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for just jogging my memory on the reason why there was that delay, and for your report. Thanks.
Any other questions before we bring this question to a close? Great. Thank you very much for coming this evening and answering our questions in person. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, no problem. And so I will follow up with that sketch about what they're proposing to do, and then we'll follow up on those lifting nails there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're moving on then to item 5A. We have a letter from the public with Rogers Tower concern under correspondence 5A.
How did the consultation go?
So myself and Councillor Downey attended, and there were a handful of people present. Concerns about the sightlines, concerns about the health risks that may be associated with the tower. They did say that it was one of the, what's it called, low emitting? It's a 30-meter tower, requires public notice. This is less than that. So they tried to assure us that they were going over and above their normal process. They need from us sorry, I'm just trying to go through my notes here. What is it called? A permit?
If we give support for the project, it makes it simpler for them. Otherwise, they need to go through federal channels to get access to the site. Even though there were very few on the call, there were no supporters on the call. There were more who were against it. There were concerns that the location is near residential areas. And they were called to task because the photos they submitted showing the proximity of the pole focused towards the forest and over what would be Cal Tire and such. It neglected the subdivision located up above it, Jensen Place, I believe. So they were called to task on that.
Yeah, and just on that, they were thinking they were serving an industrial area that would alleviate some of the pressure from the residential up the top, so that would free up, the bottleneck that occurs. Not being fully aware that ours is a very blended downtown core with residential nearby. So that point was brought to their attention as well.
Which street was it? The range was to
Cedar.
Cedar. So the
That's
range
it.
only goes to Cedar Street. It's not a large range, which prompted the question, how many more of these poles will we be bringing into town? And they very deliberately never once used the word 5G in their presentation, which of course is what causes people concern to have 5G in proximity to areas where people gather. There was also no mention, I raised the fact that there is an aerodrome. We have one on the waterfront located adjacent to CAB. And they said that where aerodromes or airports are located, they can only put in 3.2 is the megahertz, whichever it is, not the full 5. So they have to step it down if it's near an aerodrome. They hadn't looked into it. They said, well, it's not our problem. That would be Transport Canada to address it and bring it forward. They have to take a look at it. So they seem to want to get this done quick, and it feels a bit, the way the information was laid out was very pointed in a direction. It wasn't all encompassing. The questions did come from the floor, and they did their best to answer them.
So if they don't get a letter of support, they go through federal channels and they get it anyways?
Well, we can appeal from there. We can state our case.
Yeah, I see.
There.
ISID is the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, and that's who has ultimate authority over this decision.
And is the purpose of this for Rogers customers? I wasn't quite clear on it because, TELUS put the infrastructure in BC Tel days all those years ago, and everybody piggybacks on BC Tel's infrastructure. So is this infrastructure that's going in that is going to benefit all cell phone users, or is this only
It's
for
only
Rogers
Rogers.
customers?
It's not a big enough tower to put add anything else to it and be able to offer someone else as good a services that tower is going to offer them at the top.
So there's nothing even for like our 911 system to be able to.
No, they
give some
did, they did mention that it does give the opportunity if one system is down, then the other system, because of course, that's the concern of the government right now.
When Rogers'
Yeah.
system went down across Canada, everybody lost everything.
It's so the one I did ask the question, is this because they are sole source provider for internet or Interact? And they said that is a factor in it.
And then we may have brought up a couple of points because we said that the paper in which they advertised, the time that they selected, you know, they said they've done this in other communities, and I said would probably, you know, behoove them next time to interact, especially in a small rural community, to find out what is the best way to get the information out there, and what is the best time. And they said, oh, this time works in other communities. I said, well, it doesn't work. I mean, predominantly people are in the forest industry here. It was a terrible time, so. That's just one part. They're still going out to the neighboring businesses as well. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councillor Cool.
I'd like to make a motion. We advise Rogers we do not support the tower application. Send them a letter.
I'll second that.
I think rather than just wait and say nothing, we should just tell them how we feel, and that's how I feel. And if everyone feels the same, then so be it.
Is that how their process works? Although they, because I thought information had to go into somewhere by the
Yeah, I've got,
15th of October.
I've got to defer to staff because staff has been communicating. I thought they're completing the public process first.
Through the chair, yeah, there's a couple different processes, and I have a meeting with Kevin Brooks from that meeting on this spot. I can bring that question to him later, but there's the process, and then they apply for they come to council with a request for the, so I can remember it again, it's the land use.
We know what you mean.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Yeah, so let's come back to council and ask for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't hear that, but I don't really care. It's like if we can send them a letter anytime we want, circumvent the process, and we should tell them if we all agree. And I think I want to tell them that we don't support it. So whether we wait till after or slough it off to the next council, I don't think we should.
So-
Come on.
You say that's
I think
a friendly
that-
amendment to say that we don't support it in the current
Location.
in the current proposal, the current, what they're giving us, we don't support it in that.
My motion, if they want to read it back, is not to support the tower application. So, I mean, that essentially says what you're saying. The application for is the tower at that spot. If they want to come back for a different location or something, that's obviously implied. But they've made an application for a tower at this spot. And my motion is to tell them we do not support it.
Any other comments?
I think it's pretty clear that there's valid reasons to not have it at that location, even though that happens to be an industrial zone for industrial use. There are more appropriate locations that we have that it should go. And if they're asking for our support, no, we're not going to give it. Why would we? Any more than we should support something else that doesn't match what our community wants. It's going to be an ugly thing sitting there, even though it's only 20 meters high, it's still there in the sight line that it could be up in the top of the hill or somewhere else where it isn't there. And then if the 5G thing comes along, we don't have to deal with that right next to residences. So I don't see any reason to support it. There's nothing there. And their crisis and their timeline is not really our problem. You know, they chose when they brought it to us. We're dealing with it in a timely way now that we have it. So if they're in a panic, then it isn't one that we created. And I think we have to remember that when people are telling us we have timelines, you know, we got to get this done. Well, maybe you need to come to us a little sooner.
Yeah.
And,
How
you know,
about like, yeah, come to us first. Like, come to us first. We
Yeah,
have-
come
I
to us.
don't disagree with you at all, Councillor Cole, even in the last one that we just had. I don't disagree with you at all. Okay, I'll call the question. All of those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, next we have item 5D. We have a request from the Mount Waddington Learning and Development, donation request. See the request before you. There was a report to council from staff. And the application that the Mount Waddington Learning and Development Society brought forward. Pleasure. Currently, I think in our budget, we have. And that's our staff report here. I'm just trying to find that page, sorry. Available funds, 4,661, 461. And just for clarity, this is not COVID application, this is regular granting. Sure.
So it exceeds our budget for donations, his request, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. It's hard to see. Your hand is on the,
Yeah, that's
line.
okay. I know it's hard to see me sometimes. I get it. Is this open for discussion, Mayor Wickstrom?
Yeah, go ahead.
We talk about it? I guess I like the idea of somebody taking some initiative to maybe help with job creation and, you know, improving things in Farmington. I like that. I do see some holes in it. We got like $4,200 or something in our discretionary grant money, so we're not going to hit 20 grand out of that amount, that's for sure. My question is, I looked through this and it looks to me like we've been awfully generous with using COVID funds for things that look like they belong or might belong. Is this use of funds, would this use of funds qualify for COVID funding if it had been applied for that way?
I will defer to staff.
Through the chair. Councilor Mitchell, we did have another application from the same group for COVID funds, but it does not meet the check boxes for vulnerable persons. This is more of kind of networking. It should help with programs for, sorry, I'm turning up the definition again, but it's people at risk, homeless, these types of things, and it's creating programs. This is more of a networking, I guess, opportunity, or can I speak to that?
So the proponents are here if you want to get questions answered from the proponent, so.
I'd like to speak to that, not touching the vulnerable people, because one of the organizations that is coming up is Work BC from the NIMO. And they have 4 programs they're going to talk about, and they all are targeting vulnerable people. So these 4 programs, one program is for women with disabilities, 17 years and over, looking for employment. They get $50 a day to attend a 6-week training with a 12-week follow-up as volunteer or work experience. The $50 a day allows people on income assistance to not have to be able to keep that money in their pocket. So they're going to talk about this program. Another program is Community Works LGBTQ+. They're 17 and over again. They're paid $25 a day to attend 6 weeks of employment readiness, plus 12 weeks follow-up with job developers and work training support. They also get free first aid paid for. They get food safety paid for as part of the program. Another one is Island Ops. It's individuals with disabilities. It's this online training. The first one I mentioned was cohort. So you attend the training as a cohort online as well. And then there's a Ready to Rise program for women with disabilities across BC and Alberta, and they're individualized programs for people who are ready to take the steps. It's using the learning management system format, and then again is $25 a day, it's tax-free. And it's that price because people who are vulnerable are able to get paid to take this training, and it's not taken off their check.
So I just want to clarify something. These aren't programs that are going to be, these are people coming to talk about these programs.
Well, I'll give you an example. So this program I'm just telling you about is UFOS Career Management Group. They're based out in Nanaimo. Their Work BC, the work, when I sent out the draft agenda, the Work BC Campbell River had never heard of them.
So, no, like,
So what I'm saying is that this is a networking, but it's networking for organizations and people so that those who are falling through the gaps and the cracks are caught. The person who's doing literacy training wasn't aware of Immigrant Welcome Society.
things, I'll just, okay, so, yeah, so my question is, I believe that's why it's not falling into the, like, the next step after you've brought these people and you've introduced these programs. I think the next step, it would cover with COVID funding, because you would be then beginning these programs, is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair to support those programs. So my contact, who I have for the COVID funds and how it's going to be spent. He says, so vulnerable populations, it would be supporting things like programs for the homeless, disabled, and people with addictions and or mental health issues. So it'd be to bring those programs forward. So
Well, that's what this is.
right, so developing those programs and bringing them to those people. In your proposal that you brought to the COVID funds, it was more like a networking event to bring these people together to make them aware of these programs.
Well, it's to help the service providers. What we're doing is the service providers, people who are helping clients, aren't familiar with some of these programs. And they aren't familiar with some of these agencies. Somehow I am familiar with them, but they are not familiar with each other. So the purpose of this is to bring these organizations who are not familiar with each other to talk about what their, especially their fall programming, because if we do this in February, it's too late, fall programming is done. So the Ready to Rise for women with disabilities is coming now. So it's to be able to share what programming is available. I have people coming to me asking to fill out forms or doing different things. So we need to find out how to funnel people who are vulnerable to connect with the agencies or groups that they connect with. And so that's the purpose of this.
Yeah.
The purpose is, yeah, a socioeconomical.
Is the conference already, it's already set, and this is, the donation is in order to meet the budget for the conference?
The budget's less now because we're going to eliminate the side rooms. We're only going to use that one room. The keynote speaker was the Chief Learning Officer Patelis and DCIT. Who's that? His name is Dan Pontefract. And he is going to be talking about leadership, collaboration, strategic thinking, and working together. So that's he's also looking for books. So as the CEO will tell us, he's a much in demand speaker, and I kind of, my typical way, jumped in with the feet. Because he really is an inspiring person to listen to. He's got a couple of TED Talks. So, but we can reduce the cost by 50%. The budget I gave you, we can cut it back 50%. That's the ideal. But we can bring it down to 15 for the whole thing.
So I guess I looked through the document, and I will say I looked around. I thought we have NEEPS, we have Community Futures Not Waddington, we have North Island College, we have Chambers of Commerce's, we have Ventas, which is now, my Vancouver Island North.ca. We have North Island Community Counseling Services, North Island Community Services. We have many agencies operating within the regional district currently that are all about trying to help people, to meet people where they're at, give them the skills, the training, the leg up they need to be successful, to meet their needs, to be able to have a life in our community. And so what I heard tonight about these other programs that are being offered through WorkBC, those are great. But it sounds like, if I'm hearing you, what I'm hearing is that this program, this 2-day conference is going to tell people that there's some things out here that you aren't tapping into. Is that the gist of it?
It's to bring them together to talk about their fall program. But I just gave you that one example of one, and then for example, I gave you the ethos example because you can see their posters at IGA. They're stuck on the wall. Last year, they had a Rebel Entrepreneur Program for youth, entrepreneurs. Nobody went to their meeting when they came up because they didn't know about it. And they had another meeting, something similar, on another program, and 2 people came. So people aren't finding out about these programs. And Telus is focus, attraction, and forestry, but this is bigger in that it's it's a forum for people, where these organizations and professionals can say, these are what we are able to do, but who's able to do that?
So I appreciate that really it's a forum, it's an opportunity. So it's being hosted in Port Hardy. And I wonder, to me, this is something that I'd be punching up to the regional district, saying, look, here's a couple of community members with an organization that have some great ideas. I'm trying to think, it's hosted in Port Hardy.
They have no
It's
discretionary
like, so, and we don't have a lot of funding either for something such as this, and I am concerned about some overlap, although I see merit. So I'm struggling to park $20,000 here. We don't have 20, but I can't see it.
No motion currently on the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I'm struggling to find out exactly. So this is, from what I guess, is my understanding, this is for training for people who are going to refer their clients to the appropriate programs. Is that what this is about?
No, this is a forum where service providers and organizations and people who are working in the support capacity and economic development can find out what each other is doing and what the needs are and the challenges and the successes. As I gave the example, the literacy, the person who's teaching literacy learning recently that we have Immigration Welcome Center, not knowing that we have 50 families, 50 newcomers covered to Canada families in the North Island. And the Immigrant Welcome Center is expanding into Mount Waddington in 2023. And they expect a number of new families to be coming. So they were invited to come and talk about their expansion to Mount Waddington as a presence.
Did you have a follow-up question, Councillor Mitchell?
Actually, I don't think so. I think in its present form, it's not clear enough to me after listening to the discussion. I can't support this. That's all I have to say.
I guess my concern is, well, one, we don't have the budget, and two, is there another way, a more economical way to gather these groups together to be able to disseminate that this particular information that you're speaking about. That's my concern.
Mayor Richard?
Councillor Coe?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think a more appropriate thing would be asking us to be a sponsor of this kind of event or something, you know, $500 or something. It's just not enough detail here for me to really get behind. It's a new society, maybe a bit more of a track record or start a little smaller, but I'm encouraged. It's a good idea. But yeah, I hard time getting past 10 grand for a keynote speaker, but yeah, like I say, maybe yeah, the budget's a little incomplete. Like, is there sponsors? And I could see us being a sponsor of such an event, but not sponsoring the whole event. Thanks.
So if there's no motion in support of the application, no motion to receive and file would be in order. Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item 7A. We have an application for composite fire department's equipment and training grant. So the report is before you, and what we are looking for is a motion to approve the submission of a grant application, equipment replacement, and the purchase of a wildfire pump under the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. And there's a list at the back. So any discussion on that? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Only because you mentioned wildfire. Is there any actual thing we're implementing as a result of our wildfire assessment plan? Like, I think there was maybe things we should have budgeted for cleaning up underbrush or something. No, more of an observation, I guess, if no one has an answer, but.
I think that's in the wings for our upcoming budget, based on where we had.
We got a challenge. Is there a council member who has read the report and can say there's some actual work we have to do there, or like to a specific area? Unfortunately, I don't have that answer. The report was kind of big picture.
I have read the report, and there's areas like beside the hospital. There's a few other areas. There's an opportunity at budget time, Councillor Cole, for you to have brought forward if you had wanted at that time some money set aside. Any one of us, I guess, could have.
Well, we're touting the wildfire plan, and we have no plan. That's all I'm saying.
This is just one aspect of what, yes, that's.
Sure, and it was not part of the plan. Just one other action note on this, say this was successful, assuming this is going to replace some of the town's assets. Now the fire department's gotten grants before to replace equipment. I guess it's a question for staff. Do we have a proper asset disposal policy? Or is that stuff going out the back door?
So if you can hold that thought, because that's not the motion that's currently on the floor.
It's related to the fire department, but fair enough.
Yeah, no, it is. We'll just deal with the question that's on the floor, and then you can bring that back again and get an answer for that. This was a budgeted list of equipment, my understanding from our fire chief Tate, that he has pulled and put into this particular grant application, so it will save us money.
This was.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor
I
Mitchell.
heard you say it was a budgeted list, so this is in our budget somewhere?
It is a list of, I believe that's what Chief Tate had said, that it pulled items out of the list of, or maybe that's future list for the fall budget. Some of these items.
Here's the problem, Mayor Ekstrom, that I have with piecemealing these things together into the fire department or any other department for that matter. We saw in the official community plan, the fire department, or somewhere in some document recently, the fire department's goal for next year is to buy and staff and train the crew to run a marine firefighting boat. And that's another thing that's got to be considered. And when you look at this, you add this to it, there's another whole facet of firefighting that involves equipment that we don't currently own. And if we buy it, we become responsible to continue upgrading and maintaining it. And it requires training that we don't currently have for our fire crews.
So you asked a question, and you
I'm not
went
asking a
straight
question.
into it. No, you asked a question at the very beginning. Anyways, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Excuse me, I wasn't done. And I'm not done yet. And I asked a question and you didn't answer that question. I'm sure I'll give
You
you a
didn't hear
chance.
it. Staff was just about to answer the question and you jumped in on staff, actually. So if you want.
He's not in the room, Gabby. He's not in the
You know
room.
something? I have a right to make a comment on a motion and I'm doing that now. And if we pass this, it has implications for training, for future capital costs, and for the expenses that are attributed to one of the most expensive fire departments in Canada. We don't need, in my view, to add stuff ad hoc. We need to put it in the budget process and deal with it properly. We got a report here that gives us a deadline of sometime in October to get it approved. And just like we said earlier, somebody else's crisis is not ours. They set a deadline that's unreasonable and unrealistic, and we need time to consider it, and we're not being given it. That's not fair. And so I object to even seeing this on the agenda personally, but there it is. And it's more taxpayers' money being spent or being potentially spent because we don't have time to consider all the ramifications of this. And I resent being shut down or being attempted to be shut down in a valid debate about spending public money. Sorry. And that's the end of it. I'm
Thank you.
opposed to this.
I just want to say I was not shutting you down. You'd ask a question and staff was about to answer it, but go ahead, Councillor Downey.
I just want to raise the point that this is a funding program that's being offered by the BC government, and it's being administered by the Union of BC Municipalities. And so where we fall under this is under the category, it says it's May 2022, funding streams include volunteer and composite fire departments, equipment, and training. And so our volunteer fire department has gone forward and looked within their operation and said, look, this is timing out, this equipment needs replacing, and they brought this forward so that we can take advantage of this grant opportunity that is in front of us. At UBCM this year, we were told about this grant and encouraged the members who attended were said, look, this is here and it's not lasting forever. Get your application in, because there aren't a lot of opportunities where our fire departments are funded through grant applications or from other levels of government. So, I'm perfectly willing to support this, regardless of whether this was budgeted for 2022, 2023, or 2024. And I read the report, and as I read it, I understand that this is equipment that's timing out and needs replacing. So it's timely, we're taking advantage of it, so.
So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
I had more questions. I'm opposed. It's unfortunate you didn't let me speak twice.
And you had a point now about the wildfire mitigation plan, Councillor Cole?
I made my point. Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. I wish someone else would make a motion once in a while.
Okay, we'll move on to item 10A, council reports. First, would like to inform council that there's 2 events taking place on the North Island organized by the Numgees in Alert Bay and the Kwasilan Nakoda in Port Hardy. So there's a march in Alert Bay that begins at 9:35 at the ferry terminal. And then there's another event in Port Hardy that begins at 10:30 a.m. at this. So wanted to let council know and encourage if you would like to attend those events. Anything else? Okay, moving on to item 10B. We have an application for Josh Cornwall for the Parks and Recreation Committee. Should you approve the name?
I'll motion that, but is there a cap on how many members will
Up
be
to
on that
9.
committee? Up to 9, so okay, so there's room for.
I think we have
4, I think.
it's
Sorry, I think we were.
This must be 6.
I'll move approval of this.
Seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Could you read the motion back, please?
Motion to approve Josh Cornwell to our Parks and Rec committee.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, we have item 10C, an application from a Harbor Advisory Group by Alan Jackman.
I motion that we approve his application to the Harbor Advisory Group.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Items from in camera to be made public. We've got the custodial contract has been awarded to Sherry's Cleaning Services. And I'll ask if there's any questions from the public first. And is there anybody online? Right. And there's no media present, correct? So, motion to adjourn, please. Seconded, all those in favor? Opposed, carried.
Right. Right.
Night.
Nights.